There is such a thing as a bad developing organization and a good developing organization. Now, what I mean isn't just in the terms of rebuilds. I mean organizations that know how to develop young players and they know the right moves to make. And sometimes that's even keeping a veteran around. Like I know when you rebuild, the old adage is, we'll just get rid of all the old players. I just get rid of all the old players, and I don't really look at it that way. I think that it's kind of silly the way we look at it. Like I think sometimes we look at like a 28-year-old, like a 38-year-old, and sometimes even 38-year-olds can be really valuable, right? Like look at Corey Perry. Not that the Edmonton Oilers are a developing organization. I think the Edmonton Oilers are like the oldest team in the NHL. I think, but I still think that teams like that have value to players, especially young players, teaching them like that stuff actually does matter. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to win, but my point is for the Habs going forward, they need to ensure to have the right players around their young players so they don't falter. I could see this Habs team making the playoffs perennial, like every year from this point forward, if they make the right moves, of course. I personally think that Ivan Demidov is like the next Kucherov. Like I think he's really, really good. I think that they're at least looking at a point per game player, but these next couple of years of development on his entry-level contract are going to be huge, right? They're going to be the ones where you want to solidify this guy as a top 6 NHL player. You don't want him hanging his head. You want him scoring points and playing his game. You have to allow Ivan Demidov to be what he is going to be in the NHL, not try to mold him into whatever the Canadians want to be. And that is truly one of the best ways to develop a young player. Now, it is interesting that one of my last Habs videos, I think it was the one, I usually do like one every 4 or 5 days about the Habs, and it's interesting because I was mentioning, though I think the end of the video, I was like, the Habs need to find somebody for Ivan Demidov to play with. That's 100%, that's one of the biggest things that they need. And now we have confirmed insider news from Elliot Friedman that the Montreal Canadiens are currently looking for a player to play with Ivan Demidov. Listen, I like Evans. I don't want him playing with Demidov, okay? I don't. I think that he needs a much higher level player. I think the Habs have Nick Suzuki, and okay, like that's all right. Like I really, obviously, he's better than all right. I think Nick Suzuki is really good, but below that, they got like Kirby Dach. I'm not a fan of Dach at all, really, actually. I like Jake Evans, but I would like him further down the lineup, and the Habs have a massive hole there. So, of course, they're saying, geez, we have this young star player. He's a heck of a player. Do you really just want to give him nobody to play with? I mean, come on, right? Now, just because it's going to be hard to get a player that is a center doesn't mean you can't do it. For example, and I'm just throwing a name out there, Marco Rossi, I'm not sure if he's 100% available, but he is a guy that can play center. He's a guy that can score 60 points. He is a center. Now, to be fair, Rossi is actually quite small, and the Habs need to get bigger, so I understand the pushback that I'm probably going to get on that player, but he's a player that was not happy at the end of season with his current team, the Minnesota Wild, right? To me, in my opinion, this is one of the most likely centers to actually move in this NHL offseason. You have other players that have been mentioned around the trade, scenarios. William Karlsson. I don't know if the Vegas Golden Knights are going to actually end up trading Karlsson. You look at Braden Shen, and I don't know. They were asking for a king's ransom, St. Louis was, for Braden Shen, and I kind of look at that trade like he's getting old. I don't know. I wouldn't love that as much in my personal opinion. Marco Rossi is 23 years old. He's RFA. You have control over him for a while. He obviously is not that pleased with his organization. This is all lining up for a possible move for the Montreal Canadiens, and they have tons of assets. And at the end of the day, I will be honest that it's going to be hard to pry almost any center out of any organization, especially a guy that's a top 6 center. I think Marco Rossi is a good quality second line center that can score 60 points, and it's just going to be hard to pull a player like that out, so you are going to have to overpay. I am willing to overpay for a player that can play with Ivan Demidov. It's interesting. In that article as well, or in the podcast for Elliot Friedman, he was actually mentioning as well that the Habs are actually very much in, on Nic Hague. And I'm a little bit torn on this one because, as you know, I do think that the Habs need size. I think that size is something that matters in the National Hockey League. and I think that they do need it. But I'm not necessarily the hugest fan of Nic Hague, at least what I've seen of him with the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, if the Montreal Canadiens do see more in Nic Hague and a player that they might be able to, possibly get more out, maybe the management group and the pro scouting department feels that, hey, maybe Nic Hague can be something here. The Montreal Canadiens probably do have a really good pro scouting department, so they're probably, usually what they'll do is they'll look for players that aren't succeeding on their teams and aren't getting a lot of minutes that they feel can be better on their team, right? I'm just not so sure about that, right? This is a player that he's playing 16 minutes a game as a defenseman. He is really, really, really third pair. It would certainly improve their ability to add some size, and maybe he's an okay bottom pair guy, but I'm just not sure what that would do for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, there is a couple of positive things about Nic Hague, though. I will say that he does tend to have a pretty long reach, so he can use his stick very well with his long reach. That's good. It's weird. I just like players. I like to spend assets on players that can just play higher up in your lineup, which could be true, but I'm just not convinced with Hague. Actually, I'll just finish off this video right now with what exact center would you like the Montreal Canadiens to get? So let's say the realistic options are Rossi, Carlson, Shen, perhaps McTavish or something like that. What actual center would you like to see the Habs get? And also, do you think that Nic Hague is realistic, or should the Montreal Canadiens just save their assets for another time? Are they making a move there just to make a move? Do you understand what I mean? And I kind of am skeptical when teams start to do that. Anyways, I am going to leave this video here. If you could make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that, guys. And make sure to have a great day. Goodbye, guys.